to know where everyone is and get to know each other a little bit, based on location at least, to start out. And so just to get going, welcome everybody to the Inclusive Futures workshop that you applied for. And congratulations on being accepted and being able to participate today. It's quite an opportunity for all of us, myself included. Just to kind of go over today's events, I'll do a quick introduction of who's involved from my side and kind of the background of where this workshop is coming from, and then we'll dive in. Just one second. Will you turn off the lights, please? Thanks. Okay, so my name is Ralph Spencer Steenblick. I go by Spencer. I'm working in Wenzhou, China, and New York City, kind of between the two locations. With the pandemic, I've split my time about 50-50 within the last year and a half or so between those two places. And I'm a lecturer at Wenzhou Kane University and also at Kane University. It's based in New Jersey, and it has a campus here in Wenzhou, China as well. When I'm in the New Jersey campus, I teach a lot of inner city university students from many backgrounds. And when I'm here in China teaching at Wenzhou Kane, I teach primarily Chinese students. And it's been a real pleasure to get to know the Chinese culture and to be a part of the exciting things that are happening in China. So let me just share my screen here real quick. With me in this workshop, I have a few other experts that I've invited to participate, and I'd just like to introduce them. We have Juan Carlos Dall'Asta, and he'll be joining us a little bit later to give a presentation on his work in the same topic, and he'll be an expert that can be available as a resource to all of us. You can read his biography, but he's an expert in architecture and urbanism, and has been dealing with GAN style transfer and machine learning processes with his architectural studio recently, and so we've decided to collaborate on this workshop. In addition to that, a great friend and collaborator is Xin Wang, who has her own practice. She has her practice. It's called Bufan Space, based in Shanghai, China. And she also is, I don't know exactly the title, but she's leading the architecture school at Haiku University of Economics in Hainan, China as well. In addition to that, I have joining us Evan Cernan, who also teaches here at Wenzhou Kane University. And he's been a wonderful asset to the teaching staff here in the architecture program. And he'll be participating from time to time as well. So now on to the presentation more directly, I guess. So the title of this workshop is Hacking Machine Learning Style Transfer. And this workshop is more about the strategy for using a GAN, or a generative model, as opposed to the technicalities of the process. And so we'll get into that, but I just want you to know that it's more about the strategy. And I think that that's quite important because the tools are kind of laid out in front of us and available to us. It's a matter of how we use those tools that becomes important, at least I believe. So just a bit about my background. I have worked on projects such as the Ping An Financial Center in Shenzhen, China, one of the world's tallest buildings. The Beinecke Library remodel at Yale University, and also the Hudson Yards project in New York City. I've also worked, and you can see here examples of some of my work in robotics labs. I've worked in both Los Angeles, New York, and now I'm working at the robotics lab here at Wenzhou, Duquesne. And it's been fun to work in architectural robotics, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And that's the architectural robotics is what introduced me to this idea of working collaboratively with computation to create outcomes that might not have been possible or considered previously. And that's kind of the premise of this workshop today, is this week, is that with computation, we can create things that may not have been possible previously. So a little bit more about my background. There's been work that I've done using computational solvers, and I just want to introduce this as a precursor to machine learning processes. So you can see here we have some slides from some images from David Rutten in his attempt to help us understand computational solvers and machine learning processes in general. So what we have is tensors, and tensors are basically data points or instances of a particular data set. And so here you can see that the tensors here are different combinations of geometry in this case. And so all tensors becomes kind of a family of possible variations. And so you can see that when you apply this, you can get a lot of variation in terms of what the outcomes are and in terms of how you evaluate those outcomes. And what you get is a fitness landscape based on these outcomes, right? So there's a bunch of different possibilities that are based on the algorithmic configuration that you've created. And that can be thought of as a landscape, giving based on parameters that you set, giving highs and lows to help you understand where each of these tensors or each of these individual options lies in that field. The challenge with that is that these things become quite complex, quite fast. There's a lot of data that can be thrown around quite quickly, and it can really bog down a computer if you're not careful and you're not focused on what your outcomes want to be. So it's really important that you kind of hone in the process generally when it comes to computational solvers, especially because computational solvers are almost always happening locally on your own computer. Whereas a lot of times with machine learning processes, you have a data set that's external, maybe several terabytes of photographs, for example. But with computational solvers, it's all happening locally, which makes a big difference. And that's why we get these kind of bogged down of computation or these hanging situations. And so it's important that you're really careful about the variables with computational solvers. And with that comes this gradient or this ability to understand what's happening in terms of the resolution of your data sets. And it's really important that you're specific about what kind of trailing zeros you add in order to make sure that the resolution is correct for what you're trying to accomplish. And likewise, we run into other pitfalls where we have these situations with under-constrained variables, where you actually end up missing portions of the data set because you you have your variable boundaries too tight. And then also discontinuities similarly, that those issues come up. Now, within Grasshopper, at least, there are lots of different computational solvers. Here are just a few, and the list keeps growing. Computational solvers are kind of like a precursor to machine learning, where they're solving for problems, but they don't have that multiple layers that we see with machine learning. Now, we started to see a little bit more of that with, so here's Galapagos. We started to see more of that with multi-fitness solvers, where you're actually solving for multiple variables at the same time. And so then we start to kind of get to that layering that's happening with the machine learning process. So with my computational solving history, I've worked, oops, let's go back here. I've worked to, oh, I'm missing a slide here. Solve a complex problem called the Waldron diagram, which is a very complex code issue in New York City. And I don't know why it's skipping that. Huh, that slide disappeared for some reason. Okay. Anyway, so I've worked to create a Waldron diagram solver where before the process took several months and was outsourced to a specialist, and then with the Waldron diagram solver, we were able to use the multi-fitness solver from Octopus and create solutions to the Waldron diagram for buildings within several solutions within a matter of seconds. And then we were able to evaluate those different solutions to create the best optimal scenario for ourselves with the design process of the towers in Manhattan. Another example was using this script to optimize the curvature on these windows for a project in Washington, D.C., where we really needed to try and make sure that curvature was exactly right in order to optimize the glass bending for that materiality. And so this was the geometry, and we had to create we created many different variations to try and come up with the solution. And what ended up being is a geometric problem where we had to kind of, there was many constraints, and then there was some variables. And so we solved for those constraints to come up with the optimal geometry using these computational solvers. And another instance, let's see, is it gonna work here? Maybe it's not gonna work. It's stuck. Another instance, we created an urban planning tool that was built on Grasshopper and at first human UI, but then we moved it to other tools to kind of create that interface. But one component of that was a massing study tool that would allow us to generate thousands of different forms and then evaluate those forms based on parameters that we set to kind of create the optimal urban conditions for a planning site. And from these instances, we were able to start to use different solution sets regarding the urban condition, where there were opportunities for us to see how these different variations were able to be applied and utilized. So moving on to style transfer GANs. I'm sure you've seen some of these artworks and some of these examples, but here are just a few where we're able to kind of take a photograph and apply different styles to it, where here we have Starry Night, the Starry Night version of this photograph. Here we have, you know, other versions of this photograph. And here you can see the source for that, talking about generative adversarial networks and style transfer. Now, before we get into that more specifically, let's go back and sorry, my slides are out of order here. So what we end up with is, let's see if I can get this. Nope. I'm missing a slide showing the multiple layers of a machine learning operation. So let me just pull that up here. Well, we'll just forget about it, I guess. So when you look at a machine learning process, it has many layers where the process is able to take two components or take an algorithm and then process that through the layers of the machine learning process and output variations on the combination of the variables. So and what that creates is you have, for example, with this example, we have one photograph that's the input image, and then we have a style image that is applied to that original image. And like I was saying before, the premise of this workshop is that we are focused on utilizing this GAN process, but in a way that's kind of other than the way that it was meant to be used. And that's why we're calling it hacking. And so, for example, instead of using the base image that we see on the far left as the base image, we might try applying that base image as the style, and then apply the style as the image. And with that, you get uncanny and surprising results that I believe are important for the design process. And let me explain why. A designer is looking for solutions, and they often have preconceptions of what those solutions might be or how to best apply different techniques to accomplish solutions. But with the computer, it doesn't have those inhibitions that we as humans have. We have these preconceptions, and the computer doesn't have those preconceptions. The only preconceptions the computer has is the data set that we give it, right? And so if we can come up with surprising results that we were not prepared for, we might find solutions that we wouldn't have considered otherwise. And I think that's very, very important, because it allows us to consider things that we had never considered before and find solutions that we had never considered before either. Now, there's one caveat to that, and that is that we have to be fairly flexible in terms of what we want that solution to look like. We can't be too constrained about what we are hoping to get out. You know, we have to be open-minded and willing to look at other solutions outside of the normal solution set that we would consider normally. Okay, so what I'm hoping for all of us, for everyone that's in this workshop, is that you all have some kind of a project or some some goal or aspiration that you'd like to work towards in this workshop. And then I'm hoping that we as a group can work through those aspirations individually and collectively. And that's kind of the opportunity for this whole week, is that we can develop these initial outcomes into something a little bit more. And I'll go into that now. So this workshop is based on an architectural studio that I taught to the third-year students at the architecture school here. And so here you can see some of the outcomes from that studio. And we actually have the student whose work is here on the screen now with us here. Her name's Shanon, let's see here, Chinese name. And she speaks Chinese fluently, and so she's willing to help anyone who's a Chinese student. Xiaotong Shi is her Chinese name, Xiaotong Shi. And so, let's see here. Yeah, Xiaotong Shi, Shanon is her name in the live stream here. And so if you have questions about understanding this from a Chinese language perspective, feel free to reach out to her and chat with her about that. And if there's enough interest, I know that there are many Chinese people here, we can have her do translations if you like, or summarize at the end in Chinese, however that will be useful. So, and when I did the introductions, I forgot to introduce Shanon, so I'm very sorry about that. Shanon is a senior at Wenzhou Kane University coming up, and she's very talented, works very hard, and you can see her work here on the screen. She's been developing this project for this whole spring semester. So just to get into the process here, we used instead of using one style, Shanon was actually using one image and a style and another image as the style. So kind of in that way, reusing this style transfer in a way that's other than its intended purpose. And so she's got these two images, and the outcome of that image is this image here. I don't know why there's a line through it. It's strange, but you can see the image here. That's the outcome. From that, she starts to replicate that as a three-dimensional space. And she's able to come up with kind of this kind of outcome based on that. And then she really wanted to get some of the dynamic elements that are expressed in this image. And so she's taken the geometry from Rhino into Blender to be able to get more of the results she was hoping for, and also to get the animation that she was able to get. Based on that. And then here we have kind of the end result here on the right. And she's got it in this animated form so that we can experience the space as opposed to only seeing it as an image there. So to me, one of the most valuable things is that this would be very, very difficult to imagine on our own. But with the machine learning processes of the style transfer, we're able to conceive of something completely other than what we had expected previously. And then with that, we can turn that image into a full three-dimensional environment. Now, what you'll get from the style transfer process is almost like looking through a pinhole. You know, you're just kind of seeing a small portion of the reality. And so we'll get into this a little bit more later, but what needs to happen is you need to take that initial image that you get out of the style transfer process, and you need to help it by probably taking it into Photoshop and giving it a little more context and a scale, because these two things are like I said before, the computer has no preconceptions, and so it doesn't want to assign a scale, doesn't want to assign greater context to the image. And so that's our opportunity as the designer to, we come in, provide the original imagery, and then we are able to receive an output from that original imagery. And then again, we're able to weigh in on the process through, like I said, the context and the scale. And so that's what Shanon has done with this piece here, as you can see. Okay, so let's go a little bit further. Here are some other examples of that process. So Huey was able to take these two images and then create this kind of output. Ted and Alex were able to take these two images and then create this kind of output. And in the end, they were able to kind of create this three-dimensional environment. This is an earlier example. They have a revised version that feels more akin to this image here. And likewise, Rachel was able to take these two images and create kind of this end result environment, which I thought was quite interesting. And Matthew was able to take these initial images and create output that actually is better than that. We have another image that shows that. But let me just spend a little time focusing on this parkour habitat example that we find here, where he's taken a Mars landscape and then also taken this project that's a real project in Singapore and combined them. What you see here is the second image. You have the sea out to the left of the image. And then when you get the output image, and he's gone ahead and added these rovers after the fact. But what you end up with here is you end up with what looks to me like a ridgeline, not water in the original image, but actually a ridgeline. And that's, oops. That's important because, again, the computer has no preconceptions or inhibitions. And so what looked like one thing in the original image, or what you may intend to be the outcome based on your choice of images that you bring together, might not be what the computer brings out. And with that, it's important that we try and withhold our own inhibitions and see possibilities outside of what we normally might consider. And so here we see a different kind of sight condition than what we see in the original image, where to me this looks to be some sort of a ridge line on kind of near the crest of a mountain, and we see kind of the atmosphere behind, and we have these shells kind of precariously positioned at the edge of this ridge line. And that to me is exciting, that we take what was originally one kind of perspectival view, and then the computer sees that in a different way and removes that perspective that we had before and puts it into another type of form that we weren't expecting. That's what I'm hoping you'll be able to do with your imagery and the way that you're able to kind of explore the process. So let me take a step back here. Let's see. So it's important that you're able to reference the original architecture studio that we produced and kind of see some of the work that we were able to work through and the results of that process. So I will add that to the chat here so you can go and browse that. Let's see if I can get Zoom here. Yeah. So here is the link to our studio website, and that studio website has a lot of information on it. The premise of our studio was thinking about the purpose-built city, and so And we were thinking about it in as broad of a context as possible. So we were saying, when considering purpose-built cities, should we only consider built ones? Can we expand our definition of city? Looking at the origin of the word, it refers to citizen. Does a citizen have to be only human? How about a termite mound? Does it have citizens, or a video game, or cellular automata? And so we really tried to expand the definition of city for our studio. And Carlos will be speaking later about facades and how to use style transfer for facades. So we're kind of, he and I are both kind of coming at this from very different perspectives. He's coming at this from a very focused perspective, looking at something as focused as facades, and I'm looking at world building or creating uncanny environments based on this style transfer process. Okay, so you should definitely spend some time on that website and check it out, and I will take us back to that website here in a minute. But let's go ahead and dive into some more of these examples. So here's another example of our style transfer work. This is again Matthew's work, where he's taken this initial image and then combine it with this image. And what you end up with is that in this original image, you have a very wide landscape, interior landscape. And then you have this kind of urban canyon feel here, and a lot of change in contrast in the image, in this image. And so what you end up with is much more dense urban canyon feel, but you end up with this similar arch type geometry that you have here, which to me is interesting because in this original image on the middle left, the center, you have a very rectilinear form and spatial configuration. But then with this urban canyon, you start to end up with these more organic geometric forms that play out inside the space. And so if you are capable in 3D modeling softwares, you could reproduce this style transfer image in a way that's quite interesting. But it all depends on your ability to model and to use generative tools to work towards this end result. And to me, the opportunity is in the opportunity of potentially constructing these spaces. And that's the thing, is that this kind of a space may have never been conceived of or considered previously, and that's the opportunity and the exciting thing. Here's another example where we're taking kind of an urban experience and combining that with some landform geographic information, and it creates this kind of really uncanny, interesting mixture between the two. For the student that was working on this example, this is Aguilar's work, he was kind of stifled by the landform geography, and it became quite difficult for him to try and work through the modeling of this example. And in the end, he kind of gave up on it. He might say something different. He might tell you a different story, but that's the intuition that I got from his process. Here's another example where he's using the landform. This one may not be. So he's using these two. I think this is a multi-step process for him. This example. So he has this contour model. He has this kind of these two section models, and then he has the landform model. And some of this may be Photoshop, some of it may be the style transfer. He definitely has a style transfer example or process incorporated, but then there may be quite a bit of Photoshop work afterwards. And again, that Photoshop work is very important because it gives us those two things, the context and the scale, a little bit more. So here we see other examples. This one may not be as as bold, but one thing that I think is interesting about it is that it takes this image here on the bottom right that is a mixture of organic forms that are kind of natural, and then these forms that are much more monolithic and looking like they're quite man-made. And then it incorporates this idea of kind of favela or informal settlement into the mix, so that it becomes this kind of conglomeration of the two different strategies. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing where we're getting the base of this original image, but then we're kind of applying to it, where we're kind of hacking that. This is a strategy of hacking the process. Does anyone have any questions? I'll keep going. I just wanted to make sure that we don't have questions. Here are some other interesting ones. This one to me is quite indistinguishable and maybe not even useful, where we're taking these two images that seem to be quite similar, and then we get a very similar result. So it's a little bit less interesting, because to me, it almost feels like a copy of the original, and it doesn't really feel like we're creating unique original content. This one is quite interesting because it gives us an urban condition that is different than what we expected, possibly, where we're getting these two different kind of languages and kind of merging them together to create something else. This one is showing the original style transfer image here, and then the Photoshop expanded version of that, where we're actually starting to give it that context and a little bit more of that scale that we don't see a whole lot of there at the top. We start to get more of that here at the bottom. And that's very important. So just as important as the style transfer process is the interpretation of that style transfer process from the designer. And so I think that it's almost essential that you take the imagery from the style transfer process and then bring that in and start to manipulate that image on top of what has been done by the style transfer process itself. Here we see that initial style transfer image and then an expanded version based on a Photoshop reading of that. Here they're doing the same thing where yeah, exactly. Where this is the original style transfer image, and then this is the output image afterwards, where they're thinking about this as a space scene. The original image, the expanded image. Likewise here and here. One thing that I think is important to note here is that this student, I think this is Rachel, she took this otherworldly experience and then really kind of brought it back home with this little Cessna plane. And so you really have to be careful about what you introduce that will make it feel foreign and not really what you want to get out of it, right? Here, I think, is a much better example where we're using kind of a backdrop of simple landscape and then building on top of that this sort of this style transfer process imagery that creates a novel environment that most likely would have never been considered previously. Rachel took this original style transfer image, expanded it to this, and then eventually created her whole animated experience from the semester based on these images. And I'll go back and show you that animation shortly. Other examples here. This one's very architectural, and I think a wonderful example of how to kind of apply this style transfer process. One of the things that I think is wonderful about this is that it helps us to move beyond the style or the aesthetic of the parametric. And I think it even helps us think critically about the post-digital in a nice way, where we're starting to think about possibilities beyond their aesthetic, and at the same time they do have an interesting aesthetic all their own. And I think that's pretty exciting. Here's a great example where this is the original style transfer image, and then it's been applied to Manhattan, which I think is quite nice, where this is that original image that doesn't really have context or scale, and then the student, this is Kristen's work. Kristen from our studio, she then gave it a scale and a context by placing it in New York City. Here we see an example from Ted, where he's got this forest and this kind of cityscape, and the combination of the two is an interesting place. When expressed as a 3D model of experience, could be a quite interesting place to experience. Oh, let's see if we can. There you go. Here's another example from Ted. And he's using Photoshop after the fact to work through this image a little bit more. It's generally all the style transfer, but he's added a few elements there in the end. This one may not be so successful. I don't know, you tell me. These combinations have this kind of result. She's tried to add some context and scale here by adding these people in the center, but I don't think it's really been so successful. This one's quite interesting, where it takes the city and creates this uncanny novel form of the city in the form of the shape of this, what would you call it? This cave and this pillar of water, this waterfall, and it's created an urban experience out of that original image. And then she's gone ahead and added people into this foreground so that we get a little bit better understanding of scale and context again. So this is the basic premise of the studio, or the workshop and the studio. And for me, it's quite simple, but at the same time novel, and it takes an approach that may not have been considered previously. I think that it's quite difficult to apply machine learning and artificial intelligence processes to computation. It's much more simple to do computational solvers that are more linear, but the machine learning processes tend to be a little bit more non-linear, I guess is the best word to say. And so with that, we end up with it being difficult to apply these problems directly to these solutions directly to design problems. And part of that is that the data sets required generally for machine learning and artificial intelligence mean that you almost have to solve the problem in other ways previously. And with architecture, that isn't always the case. So it's a little bit more difficult. So this one's a nice example where they've got this interior perspective and then this mountain. And the computer is able to kind of create this really interesting mixture of rock, of mountain and architecture, which is beautiful. And if we could achieve this in reality, I think it would be quite wonderful to experience. And he's gone ahead and added this subject in the foreground to give us an understanding of the context and the scale. And we see there that we're given a whole nother understanding of what that space is and its purpose and its function, just by helping us understand those things, the scale and context. Here we see another interesting example. This one's funny because it takes a perspectival image where we see Tokyo, and then by using this, what it ended up doing here, this is a perfect example actually, where we're taking the image and using it as the style, and we're taking this what would be normally considered the style and using it as the initial image, and so then we get the style of Tokyo applied to this style, for example, and then we get this almost flattened city perspectival view, or maybe like a 50 millimeter lens photograph of the city, and then being able to create that or reproduce that as a space or as an experience provides opportunities for us as designers, I believe. And here again, another example of the style being used as the initial image and the image being used as the style. Actually, scratch that. This is actually the opposite of this image, where they're actually using the image as the image transfer, and they're applying the style of computer networks or circuitry. And so here we see that initial style transfer effect being applied. So this is maybe not so much what we're looking for. We're looking more for this kind of application as opposed to this application. Although you do get novel results that could be useful by approaching it from the original methodology. And again, here we see two primary images used, one as the style, one as the initial image, and we get these novel results, interesting opportunities. Instead of, the tower in Singapore, we get a mountain applied. This one has been heavily photoshopped, adding the hands and the astronaut. But what you can see behind there is that we get this cupola from a space station, and we get this kind of structural strategy applied to that cupola. And so to me, that's an interesting opportunity, where what if we are experiencing this space, but experiencing it through the lens of this kind of more granular structural system. This one again has been photoshopped, where they're adding this dome in the background, but we're getting kind of these architectural towers being applied to the tree trunks and creating basically like these tower forms in the form of tree trunks. And then the nice thing about that is you can reappropriate the scale in a different manner to accomplish your goal. Other examples, here we see I believe this is an NVRDV project on the left, and then a generative design.tumblr example on the right, and we get kind of this planetoid of NVRDV, which is very novel, right? This serene landscape, and then this dystopian future landscape. We get this mixture. The cow is kind of maintained, and we get this dystopian serene landscape. quite humorous. This is quite nice. Can we imagine a future where this is the reality? This one's a really, really good one here, where we're looking up through the city and looking down on some other urban environment, and we get this. I think ignore this astronaut because it doesn't make sense. They've tried to add scale here by applying some bird silhouettes, but I don't really think it's helpful or useful. But again, if you can appropriate this image into something that you can model or generate, then you've got a lot of possibilities of what this could be. This one is, I believe, hand done. I don't think this is a style transfer image. But here we see some more of Shanon's work. This is the style transfer for those two. And then here's the quintessential image that we started with to create that output. And she's added these and then gone back and taken them out subsequently. I think I've shown you enough examples. We'll kind of hurry through these now. What I'm looking forward to is I'm looking forward to seeing your work and the things that you're able to come up with for these things. So let's get into the process a little bit more here. Oops. So, okay. Okay, so on my website for the studio that we just completed, there is a resource tab, and there on that resource tab, we have a section on machine learning, AI in architecture and design. And so there's a lot of different resources here available to you. That this is research that I've done previously to try and kind of boil it down to important aspects of architecture and machine learning that could be useful to you. I think let's see, what time is it? What are we looking at? Time, 10 o'clock. Yeah, so we've got 1 hour. So let's just go ahead and get into it more specifically here. So we have a bunch of different resources. There's, let's see here. This one here is an implementation of creative adversarial networks. You can find the paper and all of the scripts necessary to make this style transfer work. It requires a bunch of coding, but it's a pretty good one, I find. But again, there's going to be some troubleshooting and some you're going to have to debug, all those types of things. Let's see here. There's this TensorFlow tutorial, which is good as well. This one's a basic one, but the nice thing about this is you have full control over the process. If you can muster the technical requirements to get through this tutorial, you'll be able to really fine-tune the results that you're looking for. And then there's this other one here. Oops. Let's see here. Yeah, here's this. This is from Medium, and it goes through a tutorial of how to get that one to work as well. But the thing is that as a designer, you really don't want to get lost in the weeds of trying to, most of the time, you kind of need to work through things quickly. And I think that there are some good pre-built tools that help you to accomplish most of what you're trying to get without having to get into the specifications, the specificity of dialing in every single variable on the GAN, right? And so there's a few that I recommend, and they're these three here. You have the Art Breeder, you have DeepArt.io, and you have Cree Blender. Those three I feel like are really good tools that allow you to move through the process quite quickly, and at the same time not get bogged down in the specificity of every single variable. And so to me, the opportunity to work through the process quickly overstates or is more important than being available to having every variable available to you to manipulate. Let me show you why I'm saying that. So if I move through, this was Shanon's work where she was doing some kind of early research on what kinds of environments she was interested in creating for the semester. And due to time, we're not going to get into that. But just kind of as a side note, it is important that you have some kind of a precursor or some kind of a starting point that you're coming from when you start to apply these style transfer techniques. And so for Shannon and her team with Luna and Rita, they used the City of a Thousand Planets film as their kind of starting place. And they worked through a lot of the technicalities of how that was possible, how that was conceived, and what the background and the premise of that experience was. And so then they built their initial work based on that. Let's see. Let me push through here. Oh yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, but let me get into something more specific here. Okay, so here we see another group's example. This is Matthew, Aguilar, and Rose, their group from my studio here that we have. And here we have a document showing the different Art Breeder images, the different style transfer images that they created, and basically working through the process of design through style transfer. And so here you can see each image and how it was produced, and you can see the different examples that they used as their starting places. So the source images, and we have the links for those, so that people are aware that these are images derived from other imagery, so that we're not plagiarizing, but we're attributing the previous work that others have done before us. So we see the different examples and the input examples and the output examples. And the thing that I want you to take away from these slides that I'm showing you now is that it's not a one and done process, that you're going to work through the process through trial and error, and you'll kind of get a sense for what the computer wants to give you, and then you can respond to that process and get something more akin to what you're interested in getting out of it based on your experience. So here we see 1, here we see 2, here we see 3. I think that's it. I think it's just 3. Yeah, three pages of style transfers, and these are just the best of the ones that they were able to come up with. There's many more that are not shown in these 3 pages that help them to get to where they wanted to be. From these 3 pages of style transfer examples that they were able to produce, they then went on to create this storyboard, which expressed the ideas of where they wanted to take their animation, their narrative, and they were able to kind of work through the different places in that way. And then from that, they were able to create an animated sequence. And if it's okay, I'd like to show you their example now. So if we go back to the main page, we can see this is their output. Oh, loading. Okay, so there we see one example. And we're not going to be able to, in the week that we have, we're not going to be able to get to that kind of level of completeness or of sophistication. But I do think that we can get maybe 2/3 of the way there. And I think if we can do that, I would consider it a success. So for the output of this workshop, I'm hoping that we can get those initial style transfer images. So here's an example from Shanon and Luna here, where, and I haven't showed you this image, this work before, but here we can see the initial style transfer image on the left here, and then here we can see the actual final result 3D model on the right. And so that's going to be the majority of, I think, what we're going to work through in the studio is how to translate the 2D image into the 3D experience. And so we'll kind of go through those processes a little bit more in depth. Turning to the questions, because we have a few. Gorgana asks about when we're going to start creating our own, and that the answer to that is basically right now. We're ready to kind of dive in. The next question is, am I providing imagery? And I think that the answer has to be no. I think this has to come from you. You have to have some kind of preconception of what you're hoping to accomplish in this workshop. Think of a project you've been putting on the side, or a passion, something that you want to work through. The students here in my studio, I'm running a summer design studio right now, and so they're participating in the workshop in person behind me here, and so those students are going to be focused on the mechanization of architectural spaces, and so their style transfer work is going to focus on mechanization and dreaming of mechanized architectural spaces in new ways, and using the style transfer process and that translation of the style transfer process as a tool for this studio. So they're going to be trying to conceive of mechanical aesthetics and configurations that will aid them in the future process of the studio. If you need help or inspiration, that's what I'm here for, so we can work through that. Let's see, last question is from Xianyi Zhang. Pardon my pronunciation. The translation from the 2D to the 3D is her question. How does that happen? And again, yes, that is mostly a manual process, but I will kind of direct you back to the website here. In the website, we have some examples and some useful links that deal with procedural modeling, and part of that is Grasshopper, part of that is other softwares, but there are a lot of different procedural modeling techniques that can be applied here. I'm not going to get into those things. If those are skills you already have, please bring them to the table. If that's something you'd like to explore during this workshop, you're also welcome to do that. But I'm kind of taking it at face value that you're coming in with some kind of a modeling background, and that you'll be able to apply that modeling background here. Now, that said, I am happy to work with you to kind of explore new tools, as this is an exploratory process, and one that is not complete. It's one that's in process itself. And so we together are exploring this process in a new opportunity. So these procedural modeling tools are helpful, and there's many in Rhino and Grasshopper as well. And that's part of the challenge, is that when you have say a machine learning style transfer image, as you see on the left here, how do we turn that into something that's coherent and that has place and scale, as we see here on the right? And that's your opportunity as the artist and the designer that you are, is to create these interesting and uncanny experiences that challenge conceptions. That's what we're. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back and look through some of these things. Okay, so let's just open up ArtBreeder here. So this is ArtBreeder, the website here, and I recommend that you log in. Let's see here. Start. So I have an account. I believe I have an account. Let's see. I'll open up DeepArt.io as well. So I have a profile here. Let's go to my profile. So this is some of the work that I've done previously. None of it's amazing by any means, but there are things that caught my interest. This is some of the work that I did maybe even last year, trying to kind of test out and tease out these processes and how they might be useful in an architectural context. And I focused at first on more biological kind of examples here, as you can see in this earlier work. And then I started to try and play with environments, as you can see here in some of the later work that I did. But essentially, one of the nice things about ArtBreeder is that we can take, so this is an output image, and you can see the lineage here. So that was let's click on this here. Okay, so here we see the different genes, and we can see the children. Of that. 1, 2, 3. And you can choose, you know, what you get, and then you can also crossbreed this image with a new image, right? So this is the ArtBreeder process, and one of the things I like about ArtBreeder is that it is a little bit more hands-on. You have a lot more potential to kind of get in the weeds with the different variables. But that can be a challenge and a problem as well. I think one of the things that's nice about this style transfer process is that there is some ambiguity and some black box-ness to the process that allows it to be outside of your control, if you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so that's ArtBreeder, and then here we see DeepArt.io, and this is an example that I used early on in the studio workshop, where I'm using the Mandelbrot sequence as the environment, and then I'm using this architectural space that's kind of futuristic looking as the style. And what we get is, if you look closely, you can see the Mandelbrot sequence here. But when we look at this as a viewer, we don't see the Mandelbrot sequence. We see a space where we see kind of a glassy floor, and then we see this really interesting roof structure that again is outside of the normal aesthetics that we're used to, in terms of it doesn't really fit into the parametric aesthetic, and it doesn't really fit into any other aesthetic. It's kind of this new aesthetic in a way, which I think is quite amazing. And so I think that there's some real opportunity with that. So let me just sign in real quick, and we'll get, let's see if I can, let's see if I can do it. Looks like I have. lost my password here, unfortunately. Let me get back in. So after today's kind of introduction, I'm hoping that you guys can start doing some of these style transfers. And I'm recommending that you use one of these pre-built tools so that you're not stuck trying to code all day long. Now, if that's what that's what you want to get out of this lecture or this workshop, then I'm happy to help you dive in there and do my best to help you work through the debugging and everything that goes along with setting that up. But I really do think that you'll get the most out of this workshop if you'll use the tools that we've outlined here. And so what I'm hoping is that we can take these. I guess I don't have. I'm gonna make a new one because it looks like I don't have one or something. Maybe I'll try one more. Get locked out here. I can't get in. I will make it. No, I gotta get in. I'm sorry. Sorry for this delay here. Joke. Well, Not for sure I had a password saved for this one. Nope. Okay, so you can know that the DeepR.io is the other one we want to try and use, and it's got some of these same opportunities that the other one does, although it's a little bit more simple. It doesn't have quite the complexity that ArtBreeder does. So that's what I would say would be the first task for you as the workshop participants, is to just start playing around with DeepR.io and with ArtBreeder and see what you can come up with. Both of them have somewhat of data limitations in terms of, say, the number of things you can produce, how quickly, that sort of thing. But it's not too difficult to use the software in that way. So I would just be prepared to deal with a little bit of those limitations, but I think it's worth it from my experience anyway. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to just take a few minutes for you guys to kind of start playing with those things. I think at 11 o'clock, we're going to get Carlos on for Juan Carlos on for a lecture about his facade work using style transfer. But so let's just take a half an hour, and you guys can start working through this process, and feel free to ask me any questions you have during that time. You can shout out, or you can write it in the chat if you like. Either way is fine. And yeah, take a stab at it. Make accounts to both of these platforms, and just try and start diving in. I'm going to walk around the room and see how everyone's doing here in the class as well. Oh, just so it would be great to see some examples. So if someone is able to come up with something, let's try and start sharing our examples. Maybe the easiest way is if I set up a GitHub page for this, and we can all just kind of upload our output images there on GitHub. So maybe I'll set that up. That would be fun to see what everyone's doing. We can do that on GitHub pretty easily. What's that? Right after lunch, I'd love to have you present.
I just type the title for each brochure parts and
Yeah, brochure the title. We'll delete it and we'll share it. So just so you guys are aware, this is an assignment for you guys too.
this one.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're using this as an opportunity to work through the project we're doing for the studio. So if you do the style transfer, blue sky work session to help you kind of work towards the project with the studio. All right. So all week long, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we're going to have this morning work session, workshop. And so the holidays will be everyone workshop. It's the workshop, and we're focusing on the style transfer. That's kind of this moonshot for our studio, right?
I started working. I started last week trying to have a car with a sensor or something. But yeah, I'm moving on. Yeah, but so far with all these kits, sometimes the sensor maybe the ultrasonic, which can translate the distance, the decision and stuff like that. This is what I'm trying to compose right now. And the power things have to be with the power and the ability. But to have something like what they did in project, I remember they said kind of just like the power moving object with the sensor, so you can organize something or to finish something with thread or something. But if you're just moving it with the base. So I bought one online, but it only
Well, I'm not interested in like a final product. I'm just interested in technology preview or like a proof of concept. So what I'd like to see this afternoon is I'd like to see a sensor attached and a motor attached. And when we activate a sensor, the motor turns. That's what I want to see. So it's quite simple. But
yeah, but for the motor, it doesn't have it requires for a motor extension attached to this unit.
so we have the motors here.
Yeah, but for a motor that can be actually applied on the maybe you want to have a car or something. It should have a drive. I think it's called drive extension to this unit.
I'm not worried about that. I'm just the motor and the sensor.
Okay.
Is that can be accomplished, right?
Yes, I'm sure it was too.
Cool. Hey, cool. Well, I wonder see how close it is. I was going to say, what you can pick your car stop. You can score it. Those powers, you can score it. If you pick your car stop. But again, the style has to be art studio. What's that exercise? It's to go through like a moonshot of what we're talking about. We did that for and this will be interesting to hear what you find these dynamic elements to the style transfer. Okay, so Abai, is that how you say it? Abai Meta. Does someone have a preference on GitHub or Discord? Which one do you recommend? Maybe Discord is easier. Can you all weigh in? If you have a preference, that would be great. Discord? Okay. Does someone want to set up a Discord for us? If someone wants to do that for us, that would be really, really helpful. Abai, can you help us with that? Is that how you say it? Abai? How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, that's right. But
Abai. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Abai, can you set up a Discord for us?
yeah, I can set it up. You'll have to add people in. I'll send a link. So
Yeah, that would
you
be
can add
great.
people in.
And then everyone can be added there, and then we can share all of our results in there.
Yeah, sure.
I think Juan Carlos should be joining us in a few minutes. So what I'd like to see on Wednesday is I'd like to see your first attempts. So I'd like to see kind of a list of the original images that you use as the input images and the output images. It would be really helpful for you to be able to keep track of your sources. So the source images, where you got them, and then how you're using those in terms of the two images to create the new image. And then it will also be helpful to see any 3D modeling that you're able to do on Wednesday, before Wednesday, so that we can get into small groups and we can kind of discuss what you've been able to accomplish and where you think we should take it further. If you're able to get some of the 3D modeling started before Wednesday, that would be very helpful for me to be able to be useful to you in pushing your project forward. So that's what I hope to see on Wednesdays. I hope to see kind of something like this spreadsheet that was able to be created here. This kind of a result where you have the two initial images and the output image, and of course the sources. And then it would also be helpful to have kind of a 3D model started so we can see your direction. And again, there's this middle step that's really important, and that is that you have this art breeder image, and then you want to take that into Photoshop and give it some additional context and scale. That's kind of a really important part. So again, this is a workshop. It's not a class, so I'm not really assigning assignments, but I'll just write in the comments here that process that I just explained. Okay, so that's the basic outline of what I'm hoping you'll be able to accomplish before Wednesday when we meet at 9 o'clock. And that way we can kind of break up into groups and have discussion with each other and with me to kind of think about your way forward, your path forward. Shannon, have there been has anyone approached you about Chinese, getting clarification in Chinese or anything? Are we good on language, or what are you finding? Okay, again, we have, I'm gonna slaughter this, but Xie Xiaotong here, available to help with any language issues for those who speak Chinese in the group. I guess I'm assuming that everyone's able to understand me, but if not, we have Shannon here to help with that. Professor Rusanova, do you have any results you'd like to share with us on your screen? You want to share your screen? I'm putting you on the spot because I had the chance to speak with you earlier. Do you have any results you'd like to share with us yet?
Hello, can you see me?
Yeah.
Sorry, not a professor yet.
Oh.
But, just a simple lecture with a PhD. But so I am having difficulties in logging into what was the name of it? DeepArt.
DeepArt.io.
It's not really. It hasn't really sent me the registration email yet, so I'm waiting for that. But I was kind of playing a little bit around with the art breeder, and I am very passionate about animations. So I was looking into this, picking multiple images and kind of blurring them all together. Yeah. I don't know. How do you want me to share? Should I just copy the link, maybe?
Oh, can I give you access to share? Let me see.
Sure, but yeah, nothing pretty groundbreaking yet. But I can just share with you.
No, it's just fun. It's just fun.
Okay.
Let me see. Hold on a second. I want to make sure that people can share their screen in this group. So let me get that going.
Right.
Oh, I might have to stop sharing my screen.
Oh,
But that's
yeah.
okay. Let me do that. Oh, you now have access. I think you should be able to share.
Oh yeah, now it's working. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I can see it.
Well, that was somehow playing with just landscape images. So if I just play this for you, I've always been fascinated with these kind of things, like how do they blur into another image? And then I just started exploring this other one, but I'm not quite sure I get it yet. But you know, like selecting the parents and then genes. I guess I'm just playing around with the chaos value and trying to understand what's happening. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it not just trying to combine these two images and then creating something out of it?
Yeah, I believe so. That's right. Yeah, these are options. Yeah. And then you can select one, and then that will give it more information about what future generations will do.
Right. Oh my God. Okay, it's pretty strange. I'm loving it. Yeah.
Oh, this is good.
Yeah, and then with the other one, look, I'm just still waiting for the registration email to come in. So.
I found that DeepR.io has been pretty unresponsive. I was trying to reset my password and I didn't get a response email from them. I think that their servers might be overloaded or something.
So we get a chance to do it until Wednesday. That would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that they get back to us soon because DeepR.io is pretty straightforward and a nice tool. Juan Carlos, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
How are you?
Very good, very good. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We've got people from all over the world on with us. We're live streaming on YouTube. And we're going to have a Discord server so that we can all communicate and share our results, etc. And we're looking forward to your work and kind of your experience with style transfer and I've seen some of the preliminary results with these facades and I'm really excited to see more about it. So people are just kind of finishing up with the exercise that I gave them. So go ahead and prepare yourself and get ready to present, and when you're ready you can just dive right in.
Yeah, I should be ready. So if you don't mind, I will share my screen.
Wonderful.
Is it okay? Can you see it?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. So first of all, I'm Juan Carlos Dall'Asta. I'm teaching in XJTLU, Shanon Xiaotong Liverpool University. And also I have here with me Henry, because he was one of the students that participate to this module that was make some experiments about AI in a creative design process. And especially we were also working with style transfer. So I will make a small introduction and then I will ask Henry to present his work because I think it will be much more useful. So actually, let me just give you a small background about how this brief and how this exercise was designed, because this module is about inquiries about art, digital art, and also artificial intelligence. And the decision was to support the design studio with this module. So actually we were exploring how this could be supportive in the design process. At that point when students are struggling to have more inspiration and more ideas. It was really a sort of exploration, but the results were amazing. And we discovered that it can work in different scales. And also we can share with you our experience because it's very specific into how you define the image and the style transfer. And I mean, there are a lot of things that actually are very sensible and you need to work on. So we can share this kind of experience. We work with two different systems, and then the second one is about style transfer. So I will ask Henry to present his work. Maybe we can spend just some few words also about where the topic of the design studio and how this really was useful for you. And then I can, if we have a little bit of time, then I can show more of these experiences, maybe more targeting some specific outcomes that I already shared and were interesting. Okay, so Henrik.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Henrik, and I will start to talk about Sorry.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so my project title is called The City of Marriages. So as Juan Carlos has mentioned, our project is based on supporting role for the design studio. So this is actually my studio design project. So I'm not going to dive too deep into the design project, but I just want to give a little bit of the background. So my design studio site is in Venice, the island in Venice. And basically the topic is talking about when sea level rise, the island is disappearing. So my concept is trying to regrow a new city superimposing above it. So this is my concept, but I didn't have a clear direction where to start at the beginning. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So when I started this exercise, I have two things in mind. So one thing is when I'm using this tool, I'm not just thinking this as a design tool which is secondary to our own use, but I will also consider it is more like a design partner talking to us. And then the second thing is I don't have too much understanding of algorithm itself, but I understand that for the artificial intelligence, they are very sensitive to some minor disturbance. So I would imagine there will not be only understanding of this tool, but also misunderstanding would be expected. So actually, before we dive into the style transfer, we're firstly just trying to get used to the working process by another simpler algorithm called Deep Dream. So basically, it has some preset effect that we can apply to a specific image. So at first, we just think of, we just really don't know how to start with. So I started just, okay, when we are talking architecture, maybe this is, so on the left, I try to use a completion photo. In the middle, it is more like a process model. And then for the right-hand side, it's like a concept image, concept model on a plan view. So at that time, I just try to apply using different types of architecture images. And then we both agree that on the right-hand side, which is more on plan view, we can see some pattern on it. So we may believe that if the image itself is having a defined pattern, it will be more useful in these deep dream cases. So after we get like a simple principle that having an initial image with a defined pattern, I started to using another two images, which is in the middle, which is an existing connectivity study of the site. And then right-hand side is on the same scale, but which is my design initial sketches. So I just want to use two same scale, but one is existing site and one is my design intention, and to see what the deep dream would do to it. So, so this is a very initial study, which is just trying to understand different preset effects of the deep dream providing. So at that time, I found that basically the right bottom corner, which is the layer 5A, is subdivision effect, which is more related to, because my project is on an urban scale. So this is more related to what I would be looking for. So I understand that some effect may be more useful in other domain, but for urban planning project, it's more useful if I more explore more in the subdivision layer. Okay, so I started to put this effect onto the existing site. And then because this diagram is showing connectivity, so it is interesting that the algorithm is like picking up the important nodes of the connectivity, which is, so on the right-hand side, we can see it is like picking some important nodes as a red dot. So it is like mentioning or emphasizing the importance of a specific junctions. And in the middle, we can also see some other text which has less obvious result. So basically it is the process I trying to, so the octave 246 is mentioning like the number of iterations I was trying to.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry for the lacking. Okay, so the next thing is I try to use the same effect, but on my own design intention sketches. And then this time I also try to use different types of octave just to see what effect I can get. And then there is one thing which is more interesting, which is extracted on the right-hand side. I can see that on my original sketch, I have some orange branches. And then when I apply the effect of Deep Dream, I can see that it is like becoming a subdivision guideline when I apply the effect onto it. So this is like suggesting that my sketch is like growing out instead of just trying to add a texture on it. So it is like continuing my design intention. So just now what I have mentioned is more like exploration to trying to get the mindset into trying to talk with the algorithm. So next, I want to be more specific on how it can be used. For example, if I have specific design intention, how can it provide a more clear design guideline? So this time I will use the style transfer. So similarly, at first I don't know too much on it, so I just try to find some image which is I like envisioning on, and then try to apply to my own design sketches. So what I did is, instead of just using the sketch, I started to test on some images. So on the left-hand side, this is a process, just a density study. So we can see the pink thing is actually the superimposed bridge above the island. And then the green is mentioning about the density of the building I would like to have. So this is like a concept image that I have, but I don't really have an idea of how to make it into a building or more like a city-like instead of just a conceptual collage. So in the middle, which is a reference image I really like at the time, and also on the right-hand side. So they are different images that I like, but I don't know how to apply into my site. So I try to use it as a using style transfer to see what it gives us. So first, when I try, so similarly, I try to use different iteration and try to see what does it tell me. So here we can see in the middle, it is actually quite difficult to see the outcome, except the bridge is like dissolving. But on the right-hand side, we can see for another number of iteration, we can see the bridge itself is being like emphasized, and suddenly it's growing up to the like the left corner. Originally it's just a black sky, but now it is like extension of the bridge. So this is something that I keep in mind, that maybe the row and the building would be becoming like a one thing, which is a row and block thing. And then when I'm trying to use another style image, this time it is much blurry result. So I can only see things are more like dissolving. So I didn't really get too much from it. So after that, instead of just trying infinity number of images, I try to using the same image, but trying to tweak the image itself. For example, here I try to tweak the contrast level, try to see what the effects would give us. So of course, not all the results will be perfect. So for example, in the middle, I can see that when the image contrast is higher, actually it gives a very confused results that I couldn't really get much inspiration. And then on the right-hand side, it's funny that it still gives me a bridge and block thing, but the block location is changes from the sky to the middle part. And then if I lower the contrast, we can also get other results. For example, maybe the row is much less dominant, it's like scatter, or the row and block is coming back again. So at here, I just try to get one image, which is I like the most as a like a reference image for my design next design step. And then actually how I use it is using that as a reference, and then I develop my own strategy. So actually I was thinking what the style transfer told me is like the row and the building can blend together. So I actually, this is not style transfer, but I use that as an image, as an inspiration to think of a strategy that I will study the level of the sea level rise. So whenever the sea level rise level is the highest, the more the building density will be higher at those area. So for example, so it will give out impression that when the island is disappearing at certain area, the new city will grow at that area. So similarly, I also try another image, but we can, here I just want to show that not always the image will give a satisfying result. So some of them are just really confusing, but we never know which one will work. So I think it's still worth trying. Yeah. So sorry, so just one more thing. So the only thing I can get from this is even the input image has very little color. So somehow it will like being a color just because of the reference image has some color on it. So this is also inspiring me of maybe there will be more than one type of building on my new city planning. So after that, actually, I was trying to think out of the box. So except just changing the contrast of the image, what else can we do? So actually what I did is trying to reverse the two images of the image of the content and the texture itself. So if I reverse them, what would I get? So actually it gives me an image that I really like because it's like showing another design strategy that the city itself is actually like a swarming of modules. So it is actually giving me inspiration to further develop that how my building will be like floating from the existing city to a new bridge because of the previous inspiration image. So finally, I was trying to like wrapping up all my findings into a more rationalized design strategy. So actually what I have got the result from is actually in different scale. So for example, on the left, it is more on the bridge and the connection with the buildings can be like continuous. And then the middle image is giving me another idea, which is the city itself can be scattered, but also swarming together as a whole. And then on the right, it is showing that everything can be just dissolving as one piece. So because of this like inspiration that I didn't think of before, I try to translate them into some more rationalized design strategy. So this three strategy, actually how I develop further on is trying to turn them into some more controlled design strategy. So for example, topological optimization can blend the bridge and the building together. And then aggregation algorithm can provide a feeling that the building is swarming together. And then some physical simulation can also provide some dissolving effect. So these are the strategy that I didn't think at the first place, but after the style transfer, I try to relate them to this design strategy to continue my design project. So as a conclusion, I think the biggest like award or my feeling is that when I'm using that, the AI is like a teammate that will ask, what do you think about this? So it was trying throwing out different results instead of promising a certain iteration or a fixed way of using it. So even we just reverse the whole algorithm, there will still be some useful outcome. So I think this is my biggest feeling after using that. So this is my project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What was the this is great presentation. Thank you so much. Really amazing. So what was the process you ended up using? Because the first one you used was the deep. What was it? The Google one.
Yeah, Deep Dream.
Deep Dream, right? You used Deep Dream first, but the second one you used was which process?
Style transfer.
This was the first one with Deep Dream.
Yeah.
This was the second with the style transfer.
Okay, so this. So did you? There's so many style transfer methods. Which one did you use? How, what was your process more specifically?
I think it's a script developed by another tutor. So we're basically using the tool instead of developing the style transfer script.
Okay, is that something you could share with us? I'm just asking.
I guess yes. I will just double check. This is all of it is in Google. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. If you can share with us, it'd be great. This is a workshop about style transfer, and it'd be wonderful if you could share with it. Earlier I shared two other methods of style transfer, but they're just online methods, and I can share with you those methods. But if you could share with us your method, that would be wonderful too, so that the students in the workshop have more choices in terms of what to use. That'd be wonderful.
I think that's an interesting part of the workshop.
Okay.
Do you want to see other results or?
Yeah, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
No. Actually, I asked Henry to present because it's from his experience, and I think it's the very interesting perspective. What I just want to underline from his presentation is what I appreciate more is that, you know, it's very delicate because creative processes are very challenging, and you need to have at the same time the right understanding of abstraction. So you need to push your style transfer developing into something that is enough abstract to be interpreted, but also that is not too much abstract to not be then allowing you to come back. And this slide is for me the more meaningful, even if it's not the one related to the style transfer, but this is the translation, is the result for all the style transfer process, that then this becomes something that is applied really into the design process. So it's that step further that is like coming back, right? At least for this purpose of this exercise that we were doing.
Well, and we talked about this earlier today, the fact that the style transfer is just a tool, but it's how you use the tool that's most important. So I'm really glad you're highlighting these points.
Yeah, it's super important, because if not, we will get lost in the process. Even if I'm a big supporter of processes, that for me most of the times are more important than the project by itself. But however, then at least in architecture, we need to come back, right? But depends, of course, in the purposes that you are looking for. So maybe we have maybe not that much time, but I can show you another work. It's very different. You can still see the screen, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is from another student, Xuan Zhang. Very different approach. I will not repeat what already Henry introduced, because actually it's the same class, it's the same process, it's the same platform and everything, and the same kind of exercises. But actually, I want to show you especially how the results are quite different. So again, the first experimentation was with deep dreaming. Was interesting because at the beginning, the students, we just asked to work about some architecture images, and the images were, you know, classical ones. Also, this is a project in Venice. And then slowly, they start to realize that how is important the selection of the image they will use. And then, of course, all the setup of the parameters. Because then completely change the results. So as more, again, the level of abstraction of the original image is very important. And then you will see the result, or you have noise for other things that are invading and are creating that noise and will not allow the software to work correctly. So this deep dream was really, we were not amazed by the results, but we were not looking for that, but was really just like a warm up with students, because it's the first time they're approaching it. It's a new world for them. So that's the reason that we decide to have that, right? And I think that was amazing in terms of learning, even if then, of course, you cannot compare with the results coming from the style transfer. And these were all the experimentations. It's really, Henry was mentioning something that is very important here, is like you need to try and try and try. And I like it because architecture for me is the same, right? So this is a tool that allows you to have a lot of tries, try and continue to try, and then you will slowly find some results. Yeah. I want to show these works because then we move to another scale. Henry was more focused into the urban scale in a sort of urban concept. This is going also into some detailing, right? This is really the first steps. I just want to show you all the process, because you will see the progress and how the understanding of the tool then is becoming stronger and the results are more interesting, right? So this is actually the final results from the Deep Dream software platform. And then we move to styles transfer. You can see that the learning from there is actually here, because you can see in the different textures and the selection and the knowledge and the awareness of selecting the images is already completely different from the one that was on with the first one, with the Deep Dream. And then was exploration of the different scales. So the first one related to the urban scale, and then this was also, this work, I like it because from my point of view was very interesting in the second category, that is the facade style, rather than the vision and the urban scale. Yeah. So again, starting with a sort of concept of idea. For at least in this experience, the timing was very important because you need to be there in that moment that really the idea is there, but it's not yet there. You know, it's that beautiful process of creativity that allows you to have that freedom, right? But also you have some input. And again, all the experiments with the different scales, with the different textures, and how this works, and changing all the parameters and all the results. What I appreciate is the, how can I say, how severe is the process and how you can see all the results. And actually, this is the one that I want to show you because I found it really quite interesting, because it's like, this is more about architectural language. So it's a sort of question you asked, right, to style transfer, and the question should be something like, okay, how can I redesign a facade of Venice with a contemporary digital language, keeping anyway the tradition, right? And I think I found it really quite successful and interesting. So you can see in the center the inspiration, the images about how the facade could work, and then was mixed with style transfer to a traditional facade. Details like how you cut the image, the pace, the scale are fundamental to obtain good results. And these were the final results that I found really amazing. Yeah, very inspiring for the student. So just as an example about how this tool could be extremely powerful, right? And then, of course, then you can expand it, you can combine it, and you can have any kind of inspiration. But for example, this slide is showing when this is applied to the water, to the sky. I mean, the result is completely different from something that really could be inspiring and adopted in your ideas, right? So this was in the different scales, again in the urban scale, because actually the students are in the master level 2, so they are challenged also into having a huge understanding about big scale and urban scale. And these were kind of inspiration and results coming about this experience that we have here in the university. Yeah. I think Henry already said the best part is really like a buddy, is your partner, and is like, what do you think about this? Let's discuss. Yeah. So creativity is a process in which you can really feel so lonely in sometimes when you have the white paper, we say, right, a white paper, and oh, what can I do, right? And could be a funny thing to have somebody, in this case, style transfer, that is helping you, like, to say, okay, what do we do? What about this? What about that? Yeah. And yeah, that's it. That's it for the moment. I have many others if you want. We cannot hear you, Spencer.
No, keep sharing your screen, please. Please share your screen.
Sorry.
The facade studies you've done are just uncanny and so beautiful.
Yeah,
and I think so rich with possibility. And I'm so excited about those results. I think that they're just amazing. And I think you've come to something that's going to be very useful in the future for a long time. I think that the tools will become more sophisticated, but what you have landed on here, to me, is the future of a lot of design processes.
Yeah.
And you're just expressing it through the facade, which is kind of a straightforward way to express it, but I think it's going to have much further application throughout architecture. So it's really exciting to see these results, and I think it's quite inspirational for everyone in the workshop to see these ways of working, other than my own way of working with my students. So just really grateful for your kind of expertise and and your own results. It's good.
Yeah, actually, I mean, we met a few weeks ago and was more like a coincidence, like, oh yeah, look, I was doing this experiment because, of course, it's very humoristic. You know, we know where we start, but we really don't know where we are going for the moment, right? So, and it's amazing. I think this is just a small example, maybe the easiest to understand, but it's like, wow, there are really, really, really huge opportunities coming from here, right? And we are still discovering, so it's amazing.
Well, and we're at the bleeding edge, you know, like this is just barely starting to happen right now, you know. And maybe there's other workshops that are happening in the Inclusive Futures workshop group that are dealing with similar things, but and there will probably be an explosion of the uses for this. But I think we're some of the first that are kind of exploring with these things, and so it's fun to share these with these experiences with these with the workshop participants, and I'm sure they'll come up with results that we weren't expecting and that can be just as interesting and useful as the ones we've shared today. So it's good to see different perspectives and ways of working with this process.
Yeah, great. So looking forward.
So I have a question for your student. Remind me your name again.
Henry.
Oh.
Henry. So I have a question for you, Henry. You've now had the chance to use this process once, and I'm wondering how you see opportunities, or if there's something that you are excited about using it for in the future. If there's some kind of project that you're just dying to try this process with, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Especially when there are always times we are stuck, and then I think that usually at those times it would be a perfect time to try this.
Very good point. Yeah, at the moment when you're stuck, that's great. That's a good.
Yeah, and then another point is try to break it instead of just using it. So just ignore the rules, how it should be applied, and just try to see anything to just try basically. Right.
You weren't here for my presentation, but basically the premise of my presentation was reverse the order. Take what would be the style and put it in the base image, and put what would be the base image and put it in the style. Yeah. And I think you get some really interesting results that way.
Yeah, and that was unexpected to me.
Yeah, that's a fascinating part. Yeah, so that you need to be really wild doing this. So you have result and say, okay, this could be the starting point. Okay, so.
Yeah, it's funny as the designer to be in a place where you're bringing it back in. Usually, as a designer, we're pushing the envelope, but as a designer, we actually get to change roles and be more in the role of like, how can we bring reality back into this novel image? So that's interesting. Any other questions or thoughts from any of the workshop participants? I didn't mean to occupy the stage or questions, but looks like Gergana has some questions.
Hey, hi, thank you both very much for your super interesting presentation. I really find it fascinating, especially that image that you have now on screen. So that looks pretty fascinating to me. But I was kind of reflecting on your presentation, Henrik, the first one, and especially because I actually used to work on a project with aggregation, specifically the one that you show with the stars. I'm very attached to this project. So emotionally, emotionally, physically, in any way. So I was just wondering how much, if you can just speak about that, how much is that process based on your previous experiences? Because yes, you give away something to the machine to play with, but you actually ask the preliminary questions in a way. So you put the inputs there, aggregation, for example, and you kind of let the machine play. But if you can just, and it's probably more of a philosophical question, I guess, rather than a technical one, but how much is your experience influencing the process of creativity?
Actually, in this case, the aggregation is more like a result that I get from the image instead of my own input. So actually what I was thinking is quite different, which is more like in the middle. So you can see, we can still see quite clear one object. So actually when I'm getting this result, it is quite unexpected to me at that moment. So
yeah, exactly. But it's also based on your previous experience, I guess, that you read that as aggregation, isn't it? Or maybe I misunderstood your.
Yeah. So the aggregation is my impression of the result image.
Right.
So that is actually not my intention, but actually I was getting something new that I was unexpected from the result.
Right. Yeah, well, no, I was just saying that maybe for you that means aggregation, but for someone else it may mean something else.
Yeah.
And I find this beautiful, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it's always it's basically a communication between you and your results always, but how you read it is also based on your previous experience, maybe, or something that you saw, or you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
no, I think. Thanks again. Maybe it was more of a comment than a question in the end.
Yeah, that's why at the very beginning, I also mentioned that not only the understanding, but also the misunderstanding part might be also valuable.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's a key point, though. You know, our own preconceptions, our own knowledge, our own history play into our reading of these images, right? And that's, I think, a key component of the designer, because we are choosing, we're making choices based on the output that we get from the computer. And that's our opportunity. How we read this image is in fact, the design process in many ways at this point.
Yes, exactly.
What I find fascinating is that you can compare this to sketching, you know, because also the sketches have that level of indetermination that you can interpret it in a different way, in a completely different level. But I like that because for me it's so important, right? And it's something that I have been missing with digitalization. You know, I have my students using Rhino models, and I miss this part, you know, because it's that one that is more abstract and that you can interpret it in a very different way. I think you really made a very good question, Gergana, because then it's really going into the philosophy behind these processes, right? So, and also another point that is very important, I think that to use this tool, you anyway need to have a sort of solid background and knowledge to have that correct interpretation. So
yeah, and I find it interesting because it's quite opposite to what probably the majority thinks. You know, you hit a button and then the computer generates something for you, but it's actually not true. It's half of the work is on your side, which I guess it's great. So we're not useless after all. That's what I'm saying as designers.
One of the things I tried to stress earlier was the idea that what we get out of the style transfer process is kind of like looking through a pinhole, and we are required to give context and scale to the image in most cases, right? In most cases with style transfer, what you get out is almost scaleless and contextless. And so then we have to apply that context and the scale to give it more meaning, because it gives us something, but not the full essence of meaning that we want to kind of derive as we would in a completed design process.
Yeah.
We're right at the time when we're supposed to end, but I did want to introduce Wangxin, who's here with us now. She's one of the others who's helping us with the workshop. I think she'll be giving us a lecture on Wednesday, if that's right, Wangxin. Maybe Friday, one of the two. We're not sure, not we haven't pinned that down yet, but just wanted to highlight that she's here with us now. And then also Juan Carlos and Henry, Wangxin, Shannon, I wanted to encourage you all to join the Discord group. We're all kind of joined this Discord group. You can find that link in the chat for this this Zoom live stream, and then you can join the Discord channel, and we'll be posting results and sharing our process as we go through this week of the workshop. And on Wednesday and Friday, for some of it, a good portion of it, we'll probably be breaking into smaller groups, and we welcome and would encourage your participation, especially Juan Carlos and Wangxin, with your previous experience, to help students, help the workshop members move through the process and help guide them towards results that will be useful. So we'd like to encourage everyone's participation in the week. During the week, again, same time, same place, 9 to 11:30, Wednesday and Friday. And then on Saturday, we'll be sharing and showcasing our results in kind of a show and tell. And then these results will be actually curated into an exhibition, a physical exhibition at Tongji University, and will also be a digital exhibition, I believe in the Inclusive Futures website, the digitalfutures.world website. And so any participation you can include would be great. And I'll be around for a few more minutes to answer questions if there are any. But I feel like we've had a successful first day of the workshop, and I look forward to continuing to see the work and the process that unfolds throughout the week. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to Henry.
Thanks, Ralph, for the first day. I need to run, but looking forward to see you Wednesday again.
Thank you so much. See you then.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.